Marissa Rathbone. I am your current but outgoing Director of Strategic Advocacy. I have served in this role for almost 6 years, and my time with WSSDA is coming to a close. In case you did not know, I will be starting as the Assistant Executive Director of Government Relations at the Washington Association of School Administrators, so our partner organization overseeing all of the central admin staff, currently occupied by Dan Steele, who is retiring at the end of June. So I'll be stepping into his role effective July 1st. I'm taking a midlife sabbatical the month of June, and I am leaving WSSDA in the very capable hands of Logan Noel Endress and Levon Williams, our new and improved strategic advocacy team. Before we get started with content, I'm going to pass it to Logan to introduce himself. I will just remind you all, in case you're new to this scene, that Logan actually was with WSSDA when I started at WSSDA back in 2019. He was already on the spot, and he trained me up into my role as the specialist in the advocacy branch at the time. And we are so grateful he is returning to us. As the incoming Director of Strategic Advocacy, you will be in good hands. And I'll turn it to him for a quick introduction, and then Levon as well.
Thanks, Marissa. Happy Tuesday, everyone. Good to be back in this space, to see some familiar faces, some new faces. I am Logan Noel Endress, and I'm the new Director of Strategic Advocacy. I have spent, for those of you that I don't know, I have spent the last 10 or so years in the public education space. I have worked for OSPI. I obviously spent 6 years at WSSDA doing educational policy and advocacy work here. During my time away, I was in the early learning and childcare space, working for a nonprofit in King and Pierce counties. Also got my graduate degree while I was away through American University, and I'm super happy to be back 2 years later to the date, which is kind of crazy. So glad to be back and good to be with you all. Thanks for the warm welcome, Marissa. Big shoes to fill, but leaning into it, especially with the support of Levon and Tricia. Levon, you want to jump in?
Absolutely. Thank you, Logan and Marissa. Levon Williams here. I'm the advocacy and policy analyst at WSDA. I've been on board for about 5 months now. So I'm still fairly new. I'm gonna try to keep using that excuse. But yeah, I'm happy to be here. A lot of my experience, similar to Logan, comes in the realm of public education. For the last decade, I worked in the nonprofit sector, from working at local organizations such as the College Success Foundation. I worked at the University of Washington Tacoma, building co-curricular programs for students of color. Did some public policy work at Blue Zones most recently, and I made my way to WSDA. So I'm really happy to be here, excited to be on the Strat team here at WSDA. And it's a pleasure to meet you all.
Great. Tricia's going to have a chance to introduce herself here in a little bit. Strategic Advocacy has some content we'd like to share, and then hand it over to our colleagues who are going to give you an update on some of the things that are happening WSSDA-wide that do impact your school board work, and also advocacy going forward, ultimately on behalf of WSSDA as well as behalf of your communities. So I just wanted to briefly start with an overview of the 2025 legislative session. It is a distant view in the rear view mirror now. I think we're all relieved to have it behind us, although I know all of you are grappling with its impacts now in real world and potentially very challenging ways. I joined a call earlier today, the Rural Education Center, which is small school district superintendents, talking about the RIF notices that they've had to deliver this week and are planning on delivering in the weeks ahead. And so I just want to acknowledge that that is very painful, especially in your communities as you represent and know the people who are being impacted this by directly on a personal level, and then also the students that it will impact, who you are hoping to best support and serve in reducing opportunity gaps, achieving their intended academic outcomes. And none of this makes it easy. And we were really hoping the 2025 legislative session was going to prevent those RIF notices from going out and enable you to expand your programs as opposed to have to contract them. And so I guess it's sort of in my wheelhouse to always start with good news. And my good news, if there is one to pull from this, not that you want to hear it, but I do think it's important for us to carry this with us in the interim and the session of the future, 250 plus days ahead of us, that were it not for the fact that all of the education advocate groups were not aligned early in the interim last year and had frequent, ongoing, and consistent conversations and messages with state legislators throughout the last interim going into this legislative session, I really do not think we would have gotten the 300 million we did get for special education. Again, acknowledging it that it's about a third or a fourth of the total amount that we actually needed. There was not any money from the perspective of legislators and the governor to give to public education or any other sector for that matter. And the fact that they actually made some increases for special education because it was among our top priorities, I think is absolutely because we were loud and consistent throughout the interim. And so I just reiterate that and shine a light on that because it's an important lesson for us. I don't think the 2026 legislative session is going to be any easier in terms of budget shortfall conversations. It's part of a biennium, so it's actually the same budget year. It means that we need to be aligned again, identify our priorities, and be consistent and loud in our messaging throughout the interim, because it's just too easy not to give us money right now because there's so many competing interests, as well as a very low, if not deficit level amount of funding to offer. So being aligned, being early, having frequent conversations, all very, very often, that's a good setup for talking about interim, which Logan and Levon are going to tackle here in a second. I just want to point you to two resources as legislative session recaps for your review. In session from May 4th gives sort of a high level overview of what happened in the budget and some of the key policy issues that landed. And then also a bill overview document. So all of the K-12 bills that pass the legislative session and sort of timelines for when they'll be adopted and any sort of reporting curriculum or training impacts they might have is a great resource for your board to be looking at as you look into the days, weeks, months ahead for your own local planning. So I'm always available to answer questions, and I will continue to be a partner to you as I move over into my new role. And I'm just so grateful for all of the work that you do and being able to serve you in this capacity. It's been an honor. I'm going to pass it to Logan to take it from here.
Great. And we're working behind the scenes to get the PowerPoint on the screen. Per usual, when you land in a new job, there's a lot of technical settings that have to change, and mine have not changed yet to be able to share screen. So Levon is going to pull up our PowerPoint slide deck. Thank you, Levon, for the pivot and for getting this done. But essentially just want to chat with you all about the fact that it is the interim. The session is over, if you didn't know. And it was clearly and obviously a pretty heartbreaking legislative session. While a lot happened, there was also a lot that didn't happen, and a lot more work that is ahead of us to continue. So just sort of as we transition into the interim, wanted to give you all a chance to just think through what this really means for WSSDA as an organization, as well as what this time period means for you all as lead reps and as individual school boards. So just wanted to call out a couple of really quick things for you all to be thinking about right now. And the first is really just reflecting on what happened and didn't happen during the session, and then also sharing the impacts with your local communities. This is the time when you'll be receiving updates from us, which you might have seen through the last in-session update that came out last week, OSPI, WASA, all of the educational organizations at the state level are putting out updates that I think will be helpful for you all to communicate some of those updates. And as always, as you're looking through those, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Additionally, this is the time to keep those relationships with legislators that you developed during the legislative session. Be sure that we are thanking them for what they did do for us, although we do know that what we received out of this last legislative session is not anywhere close to what we needed. The needle still moved, and I think as we think about our legislators, we have a citizen legislature, right? Our state legislators do have day jobs and have lives and all of the things. So just making sure we're, showing the appreciation there and continuing to stay connected and work together and really shape that story and tell that story for what needs to be coming in future sessions. We're about to be in graduation season. This would be a great time to think about extending invites to your legislators to pop out there, as well as possibly just out to visit some of your school buildings before the school year's over. Additionally, think about recharging. As we all know, this was a really hard session, and sometimes that means sort of stepping away and taking a breath. So just prioritize your own health and your own needs during this time. Get out in the sunshine and really just enjoy this sort of space to take a deep breath of fresh air following the legislative session. And then lastly, organize. We will be using this space over the course of the next couple of months to really talk about what organizing means for the education community, for the LegRep community, and of course, making sure that you all have the tools and resources that you need to be able to, really shape that narrative for 2026, gather perspective from your communities so that we can show up next session in a way that continues to be collective, pushing towards our priorities. So just wanted to flag some of those things for you to be thinking about at a really high level. Levon is getting ready to jump into our toolkit for legislative impact that you all have hopefully seen by now. That guide will sort of be the basis for some of these conversations over the next couple of months. But feel free to jump in with any questions. And if not, Levon, feel free to take it away.
Awesome. Yeah, sorry, I had some issues with the presentation. Sorry about that, Logan. Um, yeah, so the toolkit, I'll talk briefly about that. I don't have any slide decks on it. I think it's a great tool to utilize during the interim or even during the session. This toolkit, sorry, give me 1 second. Yeah, thanks again. My name is Levon Williams. I'm the Advocacy and Policy Analyst at WSSDA. I'm really happy to be here to support the Strategic Advocacy Branch and really share this important resource that I would think kind of guide us, you and my department, especially during this period and beyond. As many as you know, the legislative session it might be over, but that really doesn't mean that advocacy is somewhat on hold. In fact, this is an interim period. This is the most strategic time for us to really engage. I know it can be like a quieter time during this year, but it really provides a space for us to build those strong relationships with legislators, also reflecting on the work that was done, and also what didn't work during the legislative session, right? So you could really have some reflection time. And then it also lays the foundation for the policy change that we want to see in the next coming session. I know from now until next session, time can go by really fast. So I would say this is really the opportunity, the window of opportunity to shape those narratives and introduce some creative ideas, and also like strengthen a collective voice for as you begin to process and fantasize about the next legislative session. Uh, I would say strategic advocacy branch is really here to support you in this work. I would say one of the most effective ways is to stay active during this time is really utilize this toolkit. It's really dense and it's comprehensive, and I really appreciate that. We won't go through it right now in each section, but we'll have the chance to dive into each category throughout the upcoming meetings. So this tool is really designed to help you walk through any like fundamentals of the advocacy work with having like the clear, easy understanding of the tools, whether you're new to this type of work. Myself, I have some experience working at the county level, so it's really cool to see this tool to help me out as well. So I'm learning, and also this tool is for folks who's been doing this work for decades or years. All right, even if you have that much experience. And really, the best part of this is not for us to just say, "Hey, here's the toolkit, you figure it out. We're going to dig into this together, bit by bit during the next upcoming legislative representative network meetings, I think. So during each meeting, you'll have the chance to dive in to explore each section, right? So the biggest question, what is this toolkit? What is this resource? I would say it really covers everything from understanding the legislative process in Washington state and really how to craft a persuasive message to get lawmakers' attention. It really includes emails, phone scripts, testimony templates, op-ed writing guides, any tips to really engage community. You can find guidance on how to maintain like that nonpartisan stance, really coordinate your advocacy work and ground yourself in that. And also could help you set your board's legislative priorities in a way that really aligns with your district most pressing needs during this session. Um, so I wouldn't consider it just a simple guide. This toolkit is really important. It can help you connect your personal and local experiences and into that broader policy, those broader policy conversations. I say one of the most powerful forms of advocacy work is storytelling. Whether you're testifying, you're writing a lawmaker, because you could have the chance to share a real lived experience, and it puts like your face to that policy. And I think this toolkit really does that by helping you understand in the most strategic and clear and compelling way. Another thing I want to highlight, it helps with consistency across all networks. When there's different members engaging with legislators or within the media, it ensures like we're speaking the same language and we have this one strong unified voice and we are sharing those same values. So I'll share a few quick examples. I know I'm short on time, but I think this toolkit could be really helpful in real life, right? As I was stating earlier, let's say you want to invite your lawmaker to tour one of your local schools to see the firsthand impacts of underfunded programs such as special education, right, or MSOCs. I think this toolkit is really could help you schedule a site visit, planning a checklist to walk through the process step by step, or even maybe your board wants to submit feedback on a proposed bill. This toolkit has those resources in there to formulate that type of communication with legislators. So these tools can be used today. It's not really just in theory. And I would say that to remember that the toolkit is not only for the big policy pushes, it's really equally valuable for everyday engagement. You could it have guide steps on how to write a thank you note to your legislator, how to support a priority bill, whether you're posting a social media platform, any updates on that platform within your community, or you're coordinating with districts on shared issues. Uh, I think this summarizes a lot during a legislative session. It could be a great asset for you. To wrap up, I would say that I want to emphasize on this toolkit is really a companion in your work. It's here to help you be a better advocate for your district, to give you that confidence and connection that you need, whether you're communicating or advocating with the legislator. So as we move through the interim together, I really plan on going into each section and giving you better insight on how to use this toolkit. So we're not reacting to legislators during this session. We're actually shaping our voice and our policy during that time. So I'm excited to go through this toolkit with you in the upcoming legislative sessions. I'm sorry, sorry, the upcoming Ledge Rep Network meetings, and um, answer any questions and dive into this work together. So my closing remarks would be, let's just keep this advocacy strong, steady, and centered and within our community voices. So thank you so much. I'm excited. We'll have the chance to dive into the Ledge the toolkit itself in at the future meetings. Thanks, Logan.
Nice work, Levon. Thanks so much for sharing that overview. We hope you all found that helpful. And, please, as you're looking through that toolkit on your own, don't hesitate to reach out to us with questions. We'll also, like Levon said, really be going through that section by section over the next 2 to 3 LedRep Network meetings as we get through the summer. So thank you for that. We are going to move on, but before we do, I see a question in the chat from Create a Battleground. Just wanting to hear a little bit more about what the term I used, a heartbreaking session, and how that might be shared sort of in a comparative way to other sessions.
I
Happy
have
to
no frame of reference. That's my point. See, I'm so new to this.
Yeah, no, Terry, you are totally good. I'm happy to share what that means to me. And of course, Marissa, Levon, and others, feel free to jump in on that. But I think for me, I was obviously in the early learning sector during this last session, so not directly in the K-12 space, but obviously watching it. And I think for a lot of us that were on the ground in Olympia, this is the toughest session to navigate that I've ever had, and I think for many others, just in recent memory, in terms of the politics of it, especially with the state budget deficit that was experienced during this last year. It also feels like in the K-12 space in particular, this is some of the most aligned K-12 has ever been. You heard the messaging about the big three for many months before the legislative session started, all throughout. And just to see the need that we were arriving with versus the results that we actually got, that gap, I think, was just heartbreaking in the sense of where conversations and bills started at the beginning of session versus how dramatically some really quick and some over the course of the entire session were reduced by the end of session. That's just a couple of thoughts that I would offer. We obviously have a lot of work to do as we continue and really hope that the K-12 community can really stay in alignment around some of these topics, as we know that you all as school directors are legally and morally obligated to do these things that the legislature should be funding you for. Marissa, is there anything in particular, since you were here during the session, that you'd want to add, and maybe you don't share in my heartbreaking session sentiment right now?
No, I mean, I think there was a lot of writing on the wall. As an example, I think what's heartbreaking, to David Berg's point, is that we had a lot of legislative champions, legislators who were totally on board with acknowledging the need and working really hard to meet us there. There were more bills around our priorities than we've ever seen before. I think that's the result of really good interim advocacy work. And there certainly were legislators who were interested in supporting those asks. But they, like you, are just one vote, and they need the majority of 147 individual votes to pass a budget. So they couldn't get it across the aisle. So I think the early momentum was hopeful, and our fall was far and fast. I will say, though, if we were reading the tea leaves, we might have noticed that, for instance, Representative Berg's House Bill 1338, which was the total funding of our need for material, supplies, and operating costs, was late to be filed, even though the conversations around it had happened months before session started. The reason why it was late to file is because there was pretty strong resistance from House leadership that they even wanted that bill to be filed, specifically not to give us false hope. The Speaker of the House allowed it to be filed, entertained allowing it to be heard in committee, but it quickly was amended to drastically reduce the total amount. So I think we saw early on that there was a reluctance to hear MSOC, and then a quick change to bring MSOC dollars down as quickly as possible. So it was disappointing, but also I think we saw some cues early on. And then just the fact that this was the first time that the advocates were so closely aligned and we didn't get everything we wanted, boo. And we also have to take that as, had we not be aligned, like I said before, had we not been aligned, I don't think we would have gotten anything. In fact, I think our cuts might have been more significant. So per usual, it could have been worse, I'm sorry to say. It's not great, but it could have been worse. We could have been early learning or higher ed or healthcare or one of the other sectors, not part of the paramount duty. So I belabored the point. We've got two more presenters and limited time. I want to be sure we get to Tricia and Christine. Passing it back to you, Logan.
Great, and I'm just going to pass it right over and introduce Tricia Lubach, WSSDA's Executive Director, to share a bit about her work. And Levon, if you could pull up her slides, please, that would be great.
Great. Thank you, Logan. I love it. I got the handover with "it could have been worse." So I'll try to have this presentation to you all not end with that as well. That will be my goal for today. It's a low bar, but that's where I'm going with it. So good afternoon, everybody. Nice to see you all here. I think I know most of you who are on this webinar today, which is just great. That's really fun to see you. My name, if we haven't met, my name is Tricia Lubach. I'm WSSDA's Executive Director. I have been Executive Director for less than a year, about 9 months. But I'm not new to WSSDA. So I have been with WSSDA for over a decade, working in the leadership development branch. And I'm just delighted to have moved into this new role and be taking on some new responsibilities for WSSDA. For those of you who don't know, I come to WSSDA as a member for 19 years. I served on a school board, the Quincy School Board in the middle of the state, for 19 years, and just stepped down from that position less than a year ago when I took the executive director. So I come at this from multiple vantage points, from the vantage point of a former school board member, former WSSDA member. I was on the legislative committee long ago before I worked on staff, and then a decade working on staff. So I just really have always valued as a member what WSSDA does. And now I'm delighted to be able to bring the work to you. So just quickly today, we're going to talk a little bit about who is WSSDA and what do we do. If you want to go to the next one. Probably you know a lot of this information, that there are 295 public school districts and 7 state tribal education compact schools. And our membership includes the school board members, all 1,477 of them from those 295 districts. A lot of employees within the system. They serve over 1 million students statewide. And it's a big part of the budget. So not as big as we'd like it to be, but it is a big part of the budget. Okay, go ahead and go to the next one. A couple of things. Some of these slides are from a presentation that I did to the House Education Committee back in January. They convened to just give their members on that education committee a little bit more information about the state agencies and the work that they each do within the K-12 sector. And so what I shared with them, again, these are kind of some basics that WSSDA is a state, we are a state agency, but we are self-governing. And also we receive no funding from the legislature. So we're self-governing and we're self-financing. As you know, all Washington State Public School directors are WSSDA members. And then the other thing that was important to remind them is that WSSDA has no regulatory authority. So we can't tell school board members what to do or have any kind of regulation over them. School board members are elected officials, just like the legislature, just like the governor. But what we can do is we can provide training for them, guidance, what you're getting right now, which is some legislative advocacy support. And then my colleague Christine will talk a little bit about the policy and legal resources that we provide. Next. So we're going to talk a little bit about the authority. WSSDA was established in statute 101 years ago. Yes, I know we look younger than that, but that's how old we are. And again, as one might imagine from a 101-year-old statute, the language is a little bit clunky here, but really we're here to provide the support for school districts around the state. Each of you govern locally, and we assist you in that process by providing resources and materials. Next. Again, you know what WSSDA is because you're all part of it, and this is the RCW that lists that all school directors shall be members of the association. And we're in that funny space where a lot of state agencies aren't, because while we're a state agency, we are self-funded, self-supporting, and we're also a professional association for all of you. So we kind of wear a couple of different hats there. Next. This is WSSDA's mission and vision. Obviously, we're really looking at this from the standpoint of helping you ensure that each and every student is successful within the public system. And the way that we do that isn't a direct connection with students. We really see our role as we help school board members govern effectively and equitably within their own districts in order to make their students successful, and we provide that support and resources to those adults who are doing that work locally. Next. Believe it or not, we are the largest group of elected officials in the state of Washington. I think that's important for the legislature to know. There's more of us than there are of them. Keep that in mind when you're feeling nervous about testifying. Most of you all are serving 4-year terms. Some serve 6 terms. There are a couple districts in the state that have 6-year terms. And this is another important one that a lot of people don't realize, is that just like any other elected official in the state, whether it's a legislator or a governor, school board members are duly elected by their public and can only be removed from office by either being voted out by that public or through a recall. Recalls are rare, but they do happen. One happened a couple of years ago and did actually remove 3 board members. So it's rare, but also is a way that people can be removed from school board. Go ahead, next. Just a reminder, we not only don't possess any regulatory authority, we have no legal authority at all. So once again, our role really is to provide the training and resources to help all of you make good decisions. Next. So we'll take a look at our functions here. WSSDA has a nonpartisan staff, and we operate from a nonpartisan lens. For any of you who might have attended the regional meetings this year, we're really talking about leading through your purpose, and part of the role of school boards is to operate from that nonpartisan stance. We are in one of the states that does not require you to indicate your political persuasion. You don't have to put an R or a D or an I behind your name. That is really a strength because kids don't come to us from a politicized point of view. So we really lean into that nonpartisan role. And we do that through all 3 of our branches, which are policy and legal, strategic advocacy, and leadership development. And then we'll go through a couple slides here. The functions that we really think of in terms of your work as leaders within your districts are 3 areas, and they align nicely with our 3 branches. One of them is visionary leadership. Are you providing that kind of visionary leadership that helps your district have clarity and lead towards ensuring that all students are successful? Effective governance is another piece of that. So how are you as a team working together? How are you ensuring that your policy and legal aspects are being attended to? And then finally, strategic advocacy. And I think you all probably know a little bit about that because you're serving as ledge reps within your district. Next. I won't read all of these to you. This is just a list of some of the services that come out of the Leadership Development branch. Leadership Development really supports annual conference. We do a lot of services for boards. Board superintendent teams will come do workshops within your own districts, as well as things like board boot camp and Leadership WSSDA are a couple of the additional services. And we'll go to the next one, which is strategic advocacy. Again, you're probably familiar with a lot of these, the bill tracker, all of the work that takes place during the ledge session, as well as the priorities and positions. And then of course, Ledge Rep Network, which we're doing right now. And then policy and legal services. I know that Christine's going to talk about this, so I'll let her take this one, and we'll go to the next slide. She can talk about what those services are. Thinking about how WSSDA is organized, we say that WSSDA is a member-driven organization. Sometimes you might wonder, well, what does that really mean? It literally means members run the organization and staff operates based on much of their work. So we have a board of directors that is elected by each of you within the director areas. There are between 16 and 17 of them. Normally there's 16, but right now we have a 17th because we have a representative on the National School Board Association. And then we have four standing committees. We have the Legislative Committee, Resolutions, Nominating, and the Interscholastic Activities Committee, or IAC. So those are the four standing positions. Again, those are all elected by each of you within your director areas. Go to the next, please. And then we have a variety of other groups as well. We have several advisory groups, the Small Schools Committee, we have the Annual Conference Planning Committee, there's a Government to Government Task Force, a School Directors of Color Council, and a School Trust Lands Advisory Committee. There are other groups that we convene as well, but this is just an example of some of those that have a real impact on how we operate. Next. A couple of networks too. Again, you're part of one of these networks. We have a Federal Relations Network, this one for Ledge Reps, New Directors Network that we run every year when it's an election year. So we'll start that again in December after they're newly elected board members. And then we have a Student Board Representative Network that's been really a joy and very interesting to be able to have student input. So how's our work affected by state legislation? Here's a prime one. Again, Christine's going to talk about this, but one of our main areas of work is the development of model policies and in some cases procedures. That gets created by the policy and legal branch. It's based on law as we develop model policy. Then model policies go out to you, and all of you within your local authority can make changes to those if you choose. Again, what we provide you is a model that does align with law and does protect you from liability. And then we publish this terrific magazine, Policy and Legal News, which really allows our policy and legal staff to give you a deep dive into what the policy is and where it came from and how it might be applied within your district. And then there are also some legislatively required trainings. The legislature does tend to like to require things of school board members. One of them that took place during 2020, it was passed during that year, was the requirement that school board members take educational equity trainings. Those are all on our leadership development web pages. You can take a look at those. These are the 5 trainings that are currently available. We provide these both in person, at some of our events, as well as virtually. And then you probably all know that there's the open government training that's required by the legislature, and that's delivered actually by the Secretary of State. We also provide those at a couple of our events, including annual conference. So areas of focus for me for 2025 have really been around these 4 areas. And as I took over as executive director in August, we were down a number of staff members. It was really important to me that we make sure that we staff up appropriately so that you all are served well and so that our staff members also have what they need in terms of support in their work. It's what we call ourselves a small but mighty group of staff members here that serve a lot of people around the state, almost 1,500, actually more like about 1,800 when you include the superintendents. We're also working on updating our systems and technology to be more efficient for all of you. Also expanding and diversifying our revenue. We primarily exist based on dues that school districts pay, as well as the products and services and events that we provide. We're looking for some ways to add additional revenue streams, just to ensure that we are on solid footing. And then the fourth one is really important, and that's engaging unengaged members. There's so many things that school board members can gain from being involved with WSSDA, and we want to make sure that everyone knows about that and has the opportunity to engage with us. And I think we're pretty close to the end here. We are indeed. So again, I just want to thank you all for your work as board reps, and thank you for being here with us today.
Thanks so much, Tricia. Really, really appreciate the updates. We do have some questions in the chat. We will make sure we save them and get back to you. We have just a short amount of time and some really, really great information coming from Christine Geary, our Director of Policy and Legal Services. So Christine, I will pass it right on over to you. Thank you for joining today.
Right, thank you. I'm not sure who's forwarding the PowerPoint for me. So let me go to the very top one. Okay, who is doing it, by the way? Is that you, Levon? Okay, thank you. All right, it's afternoon. Yep, it's afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. I appreciate this opportunity to speak with you all. I know it can get a bit of a long day when you're just staring at a computer screen and listening to talking heads, so I'll try to move this. I will absolutely try to answer your questions, but it may have to be afterwards, just because I'm going to kind of do a lot of information for you. As Tricia's already said, the policy and legal division of WSSDA has its own basically menu of services that we do. Everything from answering questions that come in emails and calls to the newsletter that you saw that goes out 4 times a year and gives the latest updates on any changes or modifications in policy and why. We do policy services, and you may all be familiar with Kelsey Winters, who is our policy specialist, and she's a true gem. She can tell you the history and why it happened back into that 100-year history of our organization. But what I really want to spend some time with you on today is something that's kind of become a bit of a flashpoint. I mean, I don't think we have to pretend it hasn't, because there's a lot of question about model policy. And so I want to discuss how we make model policy and what it actually means for all of you as school board directors. So we could advance it, please, Levon. So I'm said this before, and I'm definitely dating myself on this, but you are all very involved with how bills become laws. And when I say date myself, it's because when I was making up this presentation and we were all working on it, and it started a few months ago, we were kind of short-term naming this the schoolhouse rock kind of policy, because if you remember the famous one, how a bill becomes a law, I think probably if I could see your faces, I would get some nods out of that. But you remember at the very end of that, the guy comes out of Congress and he's like, they've signed your bill, now you're a law, and like, yay, and all the thing. And that's kind of where a lot of you, that's kind of where your job on this committee kind of seems to finalize. But once that is done, that's when our work at WSSDA begins. So I want to tell you how those laws become model policies. So what is the definition of a model policy? Any model policy is basically minimally viable. That means it is legally defensible. It is the bare minimum that you need to make sure that you are in compliance with the law for any situation. Typically, there are procedures that go along with this, and the procedures are tied directly to the policy. Good. Advance, please. Okay, so why do we have model policies? We have model policies because we're always talking about equity and we talk about equal access. Well, there are many places that make model policy, and you must have policy as a school district. You know that. But if you all had to go out and pay for it, you could do that too. You could take $500,000 and get a private law firm or group that does this, and you could make your model policies. But that really would not be fair to many of the places in this state who don't have a spare $500,000 lying around. And so policies give you a starting point for a dialogue in your own district about how you want to run your district. It removes barriers to legal compliance because it's there for everyone and all our members. And it stops you from the ridiculous excesses and not being sure if you're actually getting very good policy or not. We guarantee this is one of the things that we put so much care and effort into, and I believe I am saying the complete truth when I say this is a high quality and you can trust the model policies. Please advance. So what a model policy isn't. That's, I said last time, that's a weirdly worded card. I want to change that one. But a model policy is not, okay, WSSDA, you must have policies. But as far as WSSDA's policies, it is not necessary that you adopt every policy that WSSDA has. That is not a rule in this state. Having a model policy is not a permanent guarantee of legal compliance. Why? Because laws change. And we know that this year the laws change here and there. One line changes and the entire policy now needs to be rewritten. Model policy is never set it and forget it. It is always going to have to be looked at, and you need to have schedules within your districts on how often to go back to them and make sure they're still compliant. And that's something where our legal policy services steps in. And finally, they're not unchangeable. There are things within almost every single policy that when you take it from the model level and bring it down into your school district, that you can change to make it your own and have it reflect your local beliefs and the things that are important to you. Next slide, please. So why WSSDA makes model policy? Okay, these are the two. You've already seen this in a few of the other presentations, I'm sure. We were established by an RCW 100 years ago. There's a WAC that talks about this. And we are charged, our orders are that we are responsible for developing model policies in order to help the districts be in compliance with the law and the best practices, as well as any emerging needs. So this is why one of the reasons we were created. And so it's one of the 3 pillars of what WSSDA is all about. Okay, so what prompts WSSDA to revise or make new policies? They come from many places, but none of them are mysteries. As you just heard, new state and federal laws come through. We get new laws, new guidelines. It needs a policy. It might be a directive from the legislature where they say you shall create this policy. Emerging issues come up, and I'm going to go into examples of each of these so you get a better sense of it. But new things happen in the educational landscape that seem to need addressing with a policy. So basically, they come from the places you're already familiar with, all of you. They come from the legislature. They come from research-based practices. They come from the districts themselves when they have an issue that they feel that it could be best addressed by a standardized policy. Turn it. Okay, so how do we shape our model policy? The contents of state or federal laws, guidelines, or regulations, legal rulings. For example, recently in Bremerton, there was a legal ruling that redefined prayer in schools. If you just strictly went by the original law and ignored the Bremerton case, you might no longer be in compliance. So case law can put a shift on an RCW that already exists. Research-based best practices. These are things that happen out in the educational field with your peers. For example, one of these might be the new that was developed, as I said, in a research-based model that allows children, the school students, to bring EpiPens to school in the event that someone in their life, their community, their household, their classroom might overdose. They did the research, found out that these pens, you cannot take them yourselves and have any harm, so there was no harm in the kids having them, but it was a real life situation that is addressed by policy now. Finally, audit findings, compliance, it's okay, you can leave it there. different rulings come out and say, no, this is how you need to do your audits now. This is how you need to do this now. And that can also affect our policy. So here's the big thing that I want to get through. If I get through almost nothing else today, I want you to take this away with you. It is required that school boards adopt policy and procedure to govern your school district. However, it is optional for school boards to adopt WSSDA's model policy and procedure. While we think it's very high quality and it is very nonpartisan, it is up to the district. If you have the funds and the mental broadband to do it, then you can write every policy on your own. But since most people cannot do that, and most school districts would find that overwhelmingly egregious on their time demands, we instead do this part for you, and then you can take it and bring it to your district and make it your own. Next slide, please. Okay, so we already said whether a board uses our policy or not, there are 3 types of policies we put up there. And you may notice that there are different wording here. We are working with changing some of the wording because we realized there was some confusion about what is the difference between essential and encourage. Is essential necessary? Does encourage mean something different than discretionary since it's only encouraged? So we're trying to consolidate that and come up with things that have more of an immediate understanding when you read it. So we are looking at them this way right now. The policies you must have addressed, issues that must be addressed at your school district level, we're calling critical. Things like this are absolute laws where you shall, according to the RCW, have something at your district. There are also federal rules. You must have a Title IX policy addressing Title IX. You must have policies addressing your IEPs. I mean, these are federal laws and they have funding attached, and so they're critical. A school district must address these things. Something important. They're important, but you're not required 100% to have it. For example, policies that discuss the boundaries between your teaching staff and your students. You must have something like this. Is it the law? Is it the law saying it? No, but it's common sense for liability issues that you have some sort of guidelines in your district about how teachers may interact. I used to work at OPP, which for some of you who may not know, is a division in OSPI that regards teacher discipline. And I can tell you there are a lot of lawsuits out there over these issues with teachers accused of overstepping their boundaries. And one of the first things that comes up in these lawsuits when the investigation is happening is the question, did the district have a policy? Second question, did the district follow its policy? So it's critically, whether you like all these issues or not, it's still critical to protect your district by having policies in place. And the last type we talk about are discretionary. We're not changing these words at all. Discretionary obviously means optional. And a policy here might be one that we're talking about developing now, which might be a school cell phone ban at the school level. We're not saying we're 100% going to do it, but there's been many districts that are asking about that. And so that would be a policy that is made up from district need. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, once again, critical. I'm not going to read these through because I've already explained it to you, but having a policy with the circumstances required by state or federal law. Important, circumstances in this category do not necessarily need a policy. However, they're pretty relevant, pretty important, and you're going to want to have something probably. Discretionary is completely up to your own district. Next slide, please. Okay, so once we have this model policy, and I want to say one more thing about the policy, because I know there's people, are we partisan? Are we nonpartisan? I can tell you just as a human being that Christine Geary does not like every single law that comes out of the legislature. I look at the tax laws, I have some concerns about them. I mean, that's just the fact of being a person in this world. But when I come into WSSDA and I work on these policies, it doesn't matter what Christine thinks about any law. The only thing I care about is making sure that it's clear and it's legally sufficient, because my only job here is to keep you all safe, to keep your districts in lawful compliance so that when someone makes an allegation, you are prepared with the armor of your policy that's up to date and ready to go. So once we have that, you take our policy, you look up what you need, or you do your refreshing, and you bring it to your board. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is how you use policy to govern your school district, to express your community's philosophies and values. And once they are adopted, they are basically the law of your district. So these are very important. They're not something that just passes. Once it's approved, it becomes the orders for how your district handles a situation. Next one, please. Okay, questions to ask when you're adopting policy at your level. Does this need to be tailored? Is this in alignment with the current law? Does policy recognize district resource constraints like staffing, training, or funding? Is it aligned with existing policies? Because as you know, if you change one, that one may have touch up against 3 or 4 others. So now you have to go and change all of them so that they're in alignment. Is implementation of this policy properly delegated to the superintendent? And does your board revisit these policies regularly? Next one. 1 trillion. That number is from 2024, how much schools paid out in different liabilities. Now, it's all bunched in together there, so there's a lot of different subject matters, but that's how much schools paid out. And it's happening across Washington, it's happening across the country. There are fewer and fewer providers for school districts. So when I say it pays to be prudent, it really does. You need to make sure, here's the thing about policy, is it's not meant, I haven't really touched on, I suppose, how we actually write it to paper. Sometimes it's in-house, sometimes we have subject matter experts. But at the end of the day, our policy is always based in law. And so when you look at a critical policy, one that must be had in order for your district to be in compliance, like I said, it doesn't matter what I think about the law, but it also doesn't matter what anyone in your district thinks about the law per se. It only matters that this is legal in that respect. And so opinions and playing with that is a very bad idea, because it can never be a matter of opinion. It can never be about what we think about the law. It has to be about what the law actually is, or the model policy becomes useless. It becomes just something that changes depending on who has access to it. And it can never be that if it's going to be legally firm for all of our members. So when I say be prudent, however you decide to get your policy, and we hope it's from WSSDA, but however you decide, make sure that you're getting an excellent product, because it will matter at some point. I can look at I can't control the questions thing on my computer. So if someone wants, I don't know how you want to do the questions, if we have time or no, but.
Thanks, Christine. Really appreciate that. We have 1 minute left. Maybe this is a short answer question. Does it matter if a state law is opposed to federal law?
Well, when 2 laws conflict, when a federal law directly conflicts with a state law, federal law wins. That's the way it goes. But what we actually have going on right now are not laws coming out of the federal government. We primarily have executive orders coming out of the federal government. So right now we stay with state law with compliance. If that changes and a law comes out of the federal government, we will change it to reflect the law. That is all I do. I come in and I look at it and we make sure it's in compliance so that you have something that you can count on and know that it wasn't meddled with, and it straight up will protect you in court.
Great. Thanks so much for that, Christine. Hope everyone had a really great time. We're going to get you out on time. I just dropped my contact info, email, and phone number in the chat if any of you want to save that. I'm looking forward to building connections with a lot of you over the next couple of months as I get resettled back in the organization, and get out into exploring the state and getting out in school districts with Levon this summer. So thanks all for being here. We're 1 minute over. I didn't want to do that, but here we are. Hope you all have a great afternoon, and we'll see you next month. Thanks, everyone.